Good morning. Last week, we heard about Thomas, our famous doubting Thomas. And we talked about the fact that sometimes we make the mistake of not getting an immediate response from God. We misinterpret that as silence. And that sometimes, silence can be where the seeds of doubt begin to grow. Doubt that God is hearing us, doubt that God is there, doubt that God really cares. However, there are times when God is anything but silent. When God seems to be yelling down and gives us signs that are so clear that unless we are completely oblivious, you can't miss them. Sometimes, thankfully, God is a yeller. Sometimes the Spirit is very clear with what the Spirit is saying. And it's kind of nice. It feels good when God's message is clear, because often God's message is not. And we say, wow, God must really want me to hear this because I keep hearing it over and over again. This must be important. I had that kind of message this week. I kept coming across situations in my life that had the same message over and over again. I saw a movie last Sunday night called Lion. If you haven't seen the movie Lion, you need to go and see it. It's a movie about a young man who is literally lost at a very young age, and after many, many years finds his way back to his birth family. A very powerful film. Sarah Jean had lost an earring back in October. Very, very special to her, very important. Turned the house upside down looking for this thing. Yesterday, last week, somebody in church put it back in her hand. It was in the driveway. Sitting there for 6 months, looked everywhere, thought it was gone forever, and it came back. And all sorts of little things like that. Now, any one of those things in and of itself would not have been that impressive. But happening over and over within a week's period, there is a message there. We get lost sometimes, all of us in our life. Our relationships get lost. They're not going where they're supposed to go, where we think they're supposed to go. We don't know how to get back to where we want them to be. We lose our way in our relationships. We lose our way with our husbands and our wives, our kids, our faith, our careers, our parents. We lose our way from a simplicity we once had, and an innocence. What or who was once our hope and our comfort is suddenly gone. That's what these two men in the gospel today were struggling with. He's gone. That's it. We had so much hope in him, and now it's all over. We had hoped that he was the one who would redeem Israel. But in the middle of that confusion, he comes. Suddenly, without any explanation and without any clue, what was lost, who was lost, is there again. Things have a way of coming back to us, sometimes as they were, sometimes, most times, in a different form. And often in ways we don't recognize them. See, when we're talking about love, real love, true love, people and relationships and situations that are given to us by God, that are a blessing to us, those things can never really be lost because they're from God. And God's gifts cannot be lost. They simply change form. Jesus was given to us as gift. God become human for us to show us how to live. To become for us the way to the Father. To free us from self-deception and distance from God. It was love that brought him here. And no matter what evil that was thrown at him, even though death itself took him, he could not be lost because he was from God. And so the Spirit found him. And he came back. The same gift, but changed in its form. That's the power of God. The power of life over death. When we lose someone, when we lose something, it's painful. We have regret. Sometimes we get stuck. We get stuck in that regret. Sometimes we become fearful of risking again, of trusting again, of letting others in. Or sometimes we get trapped in living in the past, frozen in memories and in nostalgia. We want back what we had, as it was, no different. We want time to stop. We want all things to be as they were. A few years back, when my parents passed, my brother and I sold their home, our childhood home in Baltimore. And I remember on the day of closing, I drove down to Baltimore. I got there a little bit early. I said, let me just take one last walk past my childhood home. So I walked down the street that I had walked and grown up on, and I looked at the house, and I stopped, and I kind of looked up at it, and just had some memories, just very, very nice memories of growing up there. And I was looking at this house, and then my phone rang. So I was walking around the corner, and I picked it up, and it was Luke, who was just checking on me, checking to make sure I'd made it down to Baltimore safely. And at that moment, it was almost like God put a little light bulb above my head. Basically, God said to me, this home, your childhood, was a gift. What was there, what you had, is still here. It's just in a different form. Your home was here, and it was a blessing to you. Now it's there. Keep moving forward. And I knew it was God saying that to me, because at that very moment I was in front of that house, looking at my past, my future called. God speaks to us that way. You see, God pushes us forward. God pushes us away from the past. He calls us into the new life He has waiting for us. Because if all we can do is look behind us at what was in our past, we will never see the beauty of what is waiting in front of us. If we can only see what has been lost, we won't recognize it when it comes back in its new form. If we stay centered in God, keep seeking and asking and moving forward in God, you will find what is lost. It's what these two disciples were doing on the road today. They could have well stayed in Jerusalem, locked away, and said, well, guess we bet on the wrong guy. I guess that whole time with him, all those years spent, were a waste. They could have become bitter, angered at what the religious leaders and the Romans did. Maybe even angry at Jesus for letting them down. But they kept moving forward. They struggled with it. Remember what they were doing when Jesus came to them. They were trying to figure it all out. They were talking about the last few days, trying to make sense of it. And Jesus responds to them, how slow you are to believe. See, the answer to all of those questions they were pondering was right there. It was there in the past, through the prophets. It was spelled out, but they couldn't see it. It was in front of them at that moment, literally. In Jesus, the hope that they thought was lost, but was right there. It was in front of them a few miles down the road when they would recognize him in the breaking of the bread. The Spirit was speaking to them, but they weren't hearing it. See, in our life, kids grow up. They move forward in their lives, away from parents towards their future. Relationships end. Chapters of our lives close. So whatever you have lost, whoever you think you may be losing now, if they are from God, if it has been a blessing to you, if you love them or at one time loved them, you can't lose them. Because nothing from God is ever truly lost. It only comes back to us in a different form. The lesson that the two disciples learned today, and quite honestly, Christ's message to us today, is this. If you look for me, I will find you. I will meet you. Keep walking. Keep working on it. Keep listening. Keep inviting me in. I'll find you on the road, but you have to be on the road. I'll find you in the conversation and in the confusion, in the sadness, in the word and in the sacrament, because I'm already here. You just don't recognize me. Christ is here with you, but we don't always see him. He comes to us in strange and in unexpected, sometimes, in our opinion, unacceptable forms. But he's there. And whatever is ending or fading, whatever is confusing or fearful, you will find what you need. You will find what you need, not necessarily what you're looking for. But it will always be in God, so that your faith and hope are set on God. See, there's a rule in this life that I think is hard to escape. What you walk toward is what you will find. Spirit is what you need. Walk towards God. And just like the two disciples in the gospel today, you will find him. Amen.